A judge refused to deport violent gang members from Venezuela. Then Trump answered live on camera, and what he said left the room in total silence. The streets outside were calm, but across the country, America was quietly boiling. As the daylight faded into a deep orange evening, a press conference in Washington was heating up fast. At the center of it all stood Donald Trump, calm but charged. His eyes were locked in. His expression carried that familiar, unapologetic confidence. But this wasn't just another media moment, and the people standing beside him proved it. To his left were national security officials. On his right, immigration advisors. But the real standout was J.D. Vance, sharp-suited, serious, and increasingly influential. The young senator had been making headlines for weeks with his blunt takes on border security, and his presence next to Trump sent a clear message. This wasn't just a policy update. It was something bigger. Trump stepped forward. "In my view, there are some things you just don't debate," he began. "And protecting our country, that's right at the top of the list." The room hushed. Journalists looked up from their notepads. Even the chatter in the back stopped. People wanted to hear exactly how far Trump was about to go this time. He didn't hold back. "Today, I'm making something official. The Tren de Aragua gang, criminals released straight from the prisons of Venezuela, have slipped into our country through that open border. These aren't just undocumented migrants. These are professionals. People who cut off fingers, who kidnap, who treat law enforcement like a joke." He paused. The words hit hard. "As of today," he said, "this gang is now classified as a foreign terrorist organization in the United States." A low murmur rippled through the room. Some were stunned, some were furious, some were impressed. But everyone was listening. Trump raised his voice slightly. "Let me ask you, if these guys were with ISIS or Al-Qaeda, what would we do? Sit around and wait? No, we'd take them down, shoot first, ask questions later. So tell me, why should this be any different?" The reporters in the back shifted uncomfortably. They knew what was coming. Headlines were already writing themselves. J.D. Vance didn't flinch. When it was his turn to speak, he leaned into the mic without hesitation. "We believe in law and order," he said. "But these people, they mock the law. And if any judge thinks they should stay, just know this. That's not just a legal ruling. That's a betrayal of the American people." Applause broke out from parts of the room. Others looked on, shocked. Because this wasn't just about immigration anymore. It was about trust, safety, identity. This was a warning shot. This was Trump drawing a line in the sand. And the first act of a new battle had just begun. Trump's comments exploded on social media almost instantly. Tren de Aragua was everywhere, trending across platforms, especially on Twitter, where people on both sides of the aisle were firing off reactions. His supporters flooded the feed. "Finally, the president said it. This is a terrorist threat." Meanwhile, his critics called the speech inflammatory, racist, and downright dangerous. But this time, the debate wasn't going to stay online. All night long, CNN ran the same headline: "Trump's words on gangs, tough or reckless." And by morning, one of the first people to step in front of the cameras was none other than Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Known for her sharp takes and fiery language, AOC didn't hold back. Speaking from New York, she accused Trump of planting seeds of fear and hatred toward Latino communities. "This is a culture war disguised as national security," she said, "and we're not going to stay silent." But silence wasn't coming from the other side either. On Fox News, Tucker Carlson praised Trump's statement as the wake-up call we should have made years ago. He said, "These gangs are real. This threat is real. And the liberal media wants to pretend it's not happening." Around the same time, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis weighed in. Never far from Trump's political orbit, DeSantis took aim at the courts. "If an American judge puts the rights of gang members released from Venezuelan prisons ahead of the safety of American citizens," he said, "then we'll have no choice but to find another way." Tensions in Washington were climbing fast. The Trump camp sent a clear message: judges are not the government. That was a not-so-subtle warning that they might defy the court's decision. Meanwhile, the Biden administration responded by defending the rule of law. The Department of Justice said they were reviewing the case for constitutional compliance. But Trump's base wasn't buying it. They saw it all as a stall tactic. On the ground, especially in border states, things were heating up even more. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced he was sending additional National Guard troops to the border. Local communities began organizing marches, demanding the gang members be deported immediately. The same question echoed everywhere. Was this a legal battle or the next big crack in America's already divided culture? And through it all, Trump said nothing. But that silence? It wasn't retreat. It was the calm before the storm. Everyone was waiting to see what he'd say next. When Trump stepped down from the podium, his words were still echoing, but this time there was more than applause in the air. There was tension, anger, and a growing sense of division. On Fox News, his face stayed on screen, bold letters underneath reading, "We don't want them here." His team gathered around him at Mar-a-Lago, but Trump stayed quiet, deep in thought. At the same time in Washington, Democrat senators were holding press briefings, calling the remarks racist, exclusionary, and unconstitutional. On one side, a promise to fight violent gangs. On the other, a defense of human rights. The battle lines were drawn, and neither side was backing down. In states like Texas and Florida, governors voiced full support. Meanwhile, massive protests were kicking off in places like California and New York. But Trump's message stayed clear. Keeping this country safe comes before anyone's emotional agenda. At that moment, Caroline Leavitt was at her desk inside the White House. Reports piled up in front of her. Social media scrolled non-stop on her screen. As CNN played endless analysis of Trump's speech, she calmly drafted a press statement. Her media advisor stepped in. "Caroline, the Washington Post just dropped a headline. Did Trump just declare war on Latinos?" Caroline narrowed her eyes, paused, then typed one simple sentence. "We don't judge people by their identity, we judge them by their actions." Within hours, that line went viral on Twitter. Because Caroline wasn't centering the debate around people, she was standing firm on principle. Later that night, Trump appeared live on Newsmax. The host asked, "Mr. President, this move could win you the election, but it's also opening up a massive new front. Are you sure about this?" Trump didn't hesitate. "I'm not fighting for the rights of criminals. I'm protecting the safety of victims. And if that sparks a debate, so be it." Meanwhile, across the globe, leaders were weighing in. In El Salvador, government officials released a statement thanking Trump. The U.S. is finally showing real leadership in the fight against crime. But Venezuela pushed back with a diplomatic warning. Our nation won't be used as campaign material. This wasn't just about border security anymore, it was growing into an international crisis. But Trump and his team remained calm. Because to them, this wasn't just a political move, it was about identity. It was about who they were fighting for. The safety of the American people, they believed, went beyond party lines. And the more Trump repeated that message, the more fired up his base became. In the final scene, Trump was walking with an advisor when he stopped. In his hand, his phone showed a comment. Trump created another enemy. He looked down, smirked, and said quietly, "No, I just told the truth. And someone had to." The camera pulled back, the screen faded to black, and one final line appeared in bold white letters. "The war on crime just got personal." This wasn't just a campaign moment, it was a sign of shifting tides in America. And this time, staying silent wasn't an option. Is Trump right to deport these gang members? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments.